So over the last 3 weeks, I've been trying out the all new Nike Invincible 3. I've now run 100 miles in it, and I've used it for a range of different stuff, from my recovery runs, easy runs, long runs, and I've even done a bit of tempo work in it. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you my full review, go over how it compares to the Nike Invincible 2, and there's been some quite big changes. For me, it's made it a lot more versatile than the previous version, and a bit of a spoiler, it's a much better shoe than the Invincible 2 was. And finally, I'll go over how this shoe has fitted into my rotation and how I plan to use it moving forward. So how have I used this shoe so far? My first run actually in the Invincible 3 was out in Berlin, and I did a bit of a steady run. So I started off at around 5 minutes per kilometre, sort of my recovery pace. And then by the end of the run, we were sort of hitting about 3:50 per kilometre. So I took the shoe through a range of paces to start off with, and immediately I noticed at how comfortable it sort of felt at a steadier pace. Whereas the Invincible 2 wasn't necessarily a shoe that I would consider using for anything other than easy and recovery runs. So that was a good first impression. It definitely felt a little bit more stable underfoot, and the only other thing I noticed is I was getting a tiny little bit of sort of heel movement. I wouldn't call it slippage because I didn't have any issues with it, but I found that doing the runner's lock or the heel lock, runner's knot, however you want to call it, I'll put a little video of it here, how you do that if you're not familiar with it. And I had a really good lockdown in this shoe straight out of the box. The fastest run I've done in this shoe so far was a 10-kilometre threshold session. I was looking just to see how this shoe would perform at sort of a much faster pace. So for me, that was around 10 kilometres at 3:25 per kilometre. I think I went through the 10k in about 34:14. And yeah, I was again pleasantly surprised at how good this shoe felt at a slightly faster pace. Obviously, it has the Zoom X foam in it that the previous versions have, so it's a very bouncy, responsive foam. It's one of those that you put more energy into and it gives you more energy return back. But it just felt a little bit more stable at those faster paces than the previous version. So again, really surprised by that. My longest run so far has been a 20-kilometre run, only 20 kilometres, but I definitely feel like this shoe could go a lot further, probably up to 35 kilometres for me. The only downside to using it for longer runs is it is slightly heavy in terms of shoes out there, so it's not quite like your carbon racing shoe that's really lightweight. This one is built for the mileage, for comfort. So towards the end of the run, you may notice that it does start to feel a little bit heavy, but in terms of cushioning, it's really protective, and it sort of reduces the impact related fatigue that you're going to get from longer miles. So I finished my 20-kilometre run, and yeah, legs still felt fairly fresh. But the majority of my running in the Invincible 3 so far for the first 100 miles has been those easy recovery runs. So I find this shoe, just like the Invincible 2, is really good the day after a hard workout or a heavy gym session, a day basically where your legs are feeling a little bit battered. You can put the Invincible 3 on, and because it's got such a soft, cushioned midsole, you can still run some easy miles comfortably, even if your legs are barking at you basically. So that's definitely still the plus point of the Invincible 3. Moving on to a comparison between the Invincible 2 and 3, to my knowledge, there has been 9 updates or 9 noticeable changes for myself. So I'll start with the outsole. As I said a minute ago, the lug depth has been improved, so slightly thicker on the Invincible 3 than on the Invincible 2. That just means that this shoe is going to be a little bit more grippy in those wetter conditions. I've even used it out on the trails and it handles it no problem. It's not a trail shoe, but for the sort of trails I have here in Essex, not very technical at all, this is more than capable. So yeah, improved lug depth just make this one a little bit more durable and has improved that traction marginally. The second difference is because of that increased rubber, the Invincible 3 does come in a little bit heavier in my UK 7.5. I believe it was 8 grams heavier on the scales, so not really noticeable underfoot, but it has sort of trended in the heavier direction, but you're certainly not going to feel that when out running in this one. Another change to the Invincible 3 is it has a 1mm increase in stack height than the Invincible 2. So again, ever so slightly more foam underfoot. but we've still got the same 9mm drop that we had in the Invincible 2. So in terms of feeling, they're very familiar in terms of the ride. Now the fourth change I've noticed in the Invincible 3 is how stable it feels, and I've noticed when I try to bend it, it's a lot firmer than the Invincible 3, which is very soft in comparison. Now one of the changes I noticed when looking at the cutout of the shoe of the Invincible 3 is it now has a full-length Strobel board. Now if you haven't heard of that before, I hadn't before, it's basically a piece of harder material that lays underneath the insole and just above that midsole. So it sort of gives the shoe a little bit of structure. It's basically how a shoe connects the top of the shoe, the upper, to the bottom of the shoe. And yeah, it's just added a little bit of structure in this Invincible 3 that I don't think is present in the Invincible 2. I could be completely wrong there, but I have noticed that it does feel a little bit firmer underfoot. Now that has led to the ride of this shoe feeling a little bit stiffer than the previous version. I'm not sure if it is that Strobel or maybe it's just the fact that there's got a bit more grip on the bottom here, but there's definitely an improved stability between the Invincible 2 and 3, especially when landing in more the midfoot heel area. There's a lot less sort of ankle wobblage, if that's a word, definitely isn't, in the Invincible 3 than there was in the 2. So I think this is going to suit a lot more of a wide variety of runners. Somebody who needs a bit more structure, then the Invincible 3 is a definite improvement on the 2. Another reason for that improved stability is that the profile on the Invincible 3, so the width basically is slightly wider on this shoe. So just when you're landing, the profile of the shoe spreads your weight out a little bit more than the previous version. The seventh change I've noticed is the heel clip here. This little bit of plastic extends now a lot more onto the midfoot than in the previous version, which had this sort of slightly different heel clip, but it only went to around there. So there's definitely a lot more stability in this shoe, again, for a number of reasons, but one of those being that improved heel counter. Moving on to the upper, it's been completely redesigned between iterations, so there's quite a few changes to note here. One of the most beneficial ones that I've noticed is the sort of reinforcement that this upper now has, especially in those sort of high wear areas. So this one looks like it's going to be a lot more durable, and I've definitely found that from my first 100 miles. I mean, if you look at the outsole, it's hardly worn at all, which is really impressive, considering I've worn the same amount, done the same amount of miles in both these shoes. I would say the Invincible 2 is starting to show a little bit more signs of wear than the Invincible 3 does. So it's good that the improvement has been both to the upper and the outsole on this one. And the final change is just the laces. The Invincible 3 now has a slightly improved lace that you sort of get a better lockdown with. And I've noticed my shoes aren't coming untied because it's got some sort of like ribbing on it that the Invincible 2 didn't have. It had these sort of like puffy laces that I found come undone a lot easier than the Invincible 3 does. So yeah, a minor change again, but they're the main differences between the two shoes. So which one to buy? The Invincible 2 is now heavily discounted at £107. It's still a great daily trainer option, and if you're somebody who really got on well with this shoe, then you're probably going to want to pick this one up at that discounted price. Save yourself some pennies, because the Invincible 3 is now £170. So in comparison to the current prices on the market, that's around £63 more expensive. But price point aside, I definitely would be picking up the Invincible 3 if I had a choice between the two, mainly because the improved stability has made this shoe a lot more versatile. For me, I can now use it for sort of more tempo work than I would have ever considered previously. It's also a lot more durable than the previous version, and yeah, as I said, much more versatile than the Invincible 2. So there has been some fairly big changes, which for me have made the enjoyment of this shoe a little bit more than the Invincible 2. I'd probably give this shoe, when it came out, around an 8 out of 10, and now I'd be looking at giving it the Invincible 3 probably a 9, 9.5 out of 10. So to summarise this review, I thought I would share my final verdict. For somebody who really enjoyed the Invincible 2 but didn't necessarily rave about it as the best shoe ever, the Invincible 3 has definitely been a good upgrade for me, and I found myself reaching for it for a lot more variety of runs than I did the Invincible 2. The Invincible 2 for me was mainly an easy and recovery day shoe. I'm now comfortable running anything from a recovery pace all the way up to sort of steady, even into tempo paces in this shoe. So for me, it's a lot more versatile as a result of that increased stability, as I said, for a number of different reasons. Another big improvement for the Invincible 3 three that I think make it worth the upgrade is the increase in durability, both on that outsole, having that thicker coverage, but also on this sort of reinforced upper. But yeah, if you'd like to pick up these shoes, they're both available now at ProDirect Running. I've left a link in the description, which is a bit of an affiliate link. It just means if anyone is looking to purchase the shoe as a result of this video, if you use the link, then I earn a small commission, which just helps support the production of content here on the channel. But until next time, aspire to run, run to inspire, and we'll see you again soon.